Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Rob.
And this is Ask Rob and Rob.
Welcome to Ask Rob and Rob. It's Tuesday, so we are back to answer two more of your property questions. Andrew and Adam are going to get their questions answered this week. But first, a quick reminder of how to send in a question of your own.
If you would like your question answered, then go to propertyhub.net/ask. That's propertyhub.net/ask. There, you can leave a message directly in your computer, you can find our phone number to leave us a voicemail, or you could submit a written question which may appear in the Sunday Times. Very exciting. What is exciting now, though, is our first question is ready. Let's hear from Andrew.
Hi, Rob and Rob. I have a question around mortgage arrangement fees and the associated costs of getting a mortgage. So I'm currently an overseas investor. I'm a UK national originally. I'm expat. And the quote I'm getting for an arrangement fee at the moment is £5,000, which I think is kind of high, but obviously it's weighted by the fact of my risk and things like that as well, is what my broker's telling me, that obviously I'm abroad. Just a question around the inflation point. So I know you mentioned that it's good to get an interest-only mortgage because the inflation would basically pay for that sort of cost over time, if you like. But if I'm going to be remortgaging every couple of years, potentially, if I do stay away from the UK at a cost of £5,000, my concern is, for each mortgage as well, that is, obviously growing my portfolio. My concern is that cost would potentially diminish the cost of the mortgage. I just wanted to know what your views were on that, whether those costs seem sort of reasonable and what your view would be around the mortgage generally. Thanks very much.
Andrew, thank you for your question. And this is a great question whether you are an overseas investor or not, for everyone listening, because arrangement fees in the current market are quite high. And it's a way of lenders trying to look competitive with a low rate, but then making their money from the fee. With overseas investors, yes, it is a little higher, which you rightly pointed out. But for everyone at the moment, there's no real cheap arrangement fees. So what do you do? Well, the impact of this 5,000 will really be determined by the price of the property. If you have a property that's worth over $500,000, then yes, the 5,000 hit every couple of years isn't great, but it's a small percentage. Whereas if this property is, say, 200,000, then a 5,000 hit is pretty weighty. Of course, whatever price you buy at, 5,000 is a lot of money, but if it's rolled into the mortgage and it's a big mortgage, then absorbing it isn't as painful. What you could consider, though, is looking at a 5-year product rather than a 2-year product if it's available to you. Because you are right, it will start to take a toll if you're doing this every couple of years. So if there's a way that you can put this on a long-term tracker or a 5-year fix, then that might be the way to go. A good mortgage broker will guide you through that process. Nick, who we've had on the podcast previously, has talked about how he's advising his clients to look at 5 years rather than 2 years, even though he'll do more business if he tells everyone to do 2-year fixes, because every couple of years he's getting more and more business as a broker. But the best financial decision he feels for his clients is considering 5-year fixes at the moment because of these high arrangement fees. So if there is a long-term tracker or a 5-year fix available to you, and the arrangement fee is roughly the same, then that might be worth considering. However, if you do go for a 2-year fix and the mortgage market gets more competitive, then you'd like to think that in 2 years' time it would be slightly less, but that's really basing your decisions on hope rather than making a good investment decision. And investing on hope alone isn't probably the way forward, but it could happen, so it's worth mentioning. But whatever you do, Andrew, good luck.
Yep, and we do, by the way, have a YouTube video on exactly this subject, which you can go and check out. If you'd like to go into more depth on this, it's called Why Are Mortgages So Ridiculously Expensive? So you can find that on YouTube by searching Property Hub. Let's move on to our second question. This one is from Adam.
Hi, Rob and Rob. Adam here from London. My question is about leverage. Everyone talks about how, through leverage, the proportion of your debt decreases over the long run, and that is one of the biggest benefits of property investment versus other types of investing. Could you ever see a time when mortgage companies try and link their loans to inflation and therefore erode this benefit? I guess I'm asking whether you see a risk that in the future things could happen to reduce the power of leverage in property investing. Interested to hear your thoughts. Thanks.
Adam, thank you for your question. Now, obviously, this is a speculative question by nature, so I can only give you a speculative answer, which is, I think it's highly unlikely that anything's going to change to fundamentally affect the mechanics of how leverage works. And that's because primarily this is how it's worked for hundreds of years. This is what a bank's business model is. And I know you can look at it and go, why are they doing this? This just seems like a really bad deal for them. But don't feel too sorry for banks. You might be doing really well out of leverage, but the bank is doing fine as well. They've always got a cost of funding that's lower than their cost of lending to you. And if they've got any risk around interest rate changes, they're always passing that risk off to someone else. So they're doing okay. Banks make money by making loans, and so the more business they do, the better. If you're looking at what could change this, the only things I can think of are the real extremes. So if you had a prolonged period of deflation, then obviously that'd be really bad news if you're using leverage, because you're getting the magnifying effect of leverage in reverse. But it would also be catastrophic for big companies, for the national finances, for everything else. And so the whole system is so highly leveraged that I just don't think that would be allowed to happen. Or you could say conversely, what if you have hyperinflation? What if you have a really sustained period of high inflation? Maybe then, again, the whole mechanics of how things work have to change. But you're looking at really extreme situations. The only other thing that would really affect the way this whole thing works would be if you got taxed on a higher proportion of the gain. So capital gains tax may well go up in future. If it went up dramatically, then that would of course make the whole business of making this gain from capital increases less appealing. Nothing is ever certain. Crazy things seem to happen pretty much every week at the moment that you never would have predicted. But for me, this principle of using leverage and benefiting from inflation is so fundamental. It's the thing that I feel safest building my strategy off, because it's probably the last thing that's going to change. You would need something pretty major. So Adam, hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Adam. Next week, we look forward to answering questions from Beatrice and Bertie. Until then, take care. Have fun. Bye-bye.
Yeah, Zane, you'll be waiting a while. See you next week.